Hello, and welcome to our last little segment for this set of lectures. In this part of the lecture, we're going to be talking about amine hormones, and we're going to be answering this question: what are the properties of amine hormones? Okay, so I just want to start by reminding you that we have three main chemical classes of hormones. The peptide hormones, we talked about that. We have the steroid hormones, which we just covered in the last portion. And now we're going to focus on the amine hormones and their properties, okay? So the amine hormones are hormones that are derived from an amino acid or two, okay? So basically it's a hormone that's made up of one or two amino acids with some modifications to it. Okay, and the amine hormones that we're going to be focusing on in this class, I guess, are hormones that are derived from the amino acid tyrosine. Okay, so you can see right here, this is the structure of tyrosine. Okay, and we have two main classes of hormones that are derived from tyrosine. We've got the catecholamines that are made up basically of modifying one tyrosine molecule, right? So if you look at tyrosine here, compare that to these three catecholamine molecules, dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine, you can see that their structure is, first of all, based on this structure up here, and that is, it has been derived from a single one of these tyrosine molecules, okay? Our second class of amine hormones, or our second class of tyrosine-derived hormones, is the thyroid hormones, okay? So again, comparing the structure of tyrosine here to the structure of the thyroid hormones, you can see that the thyroid hormones are made by modifying two tyrosine molecules, right? So here is thyroxine, also known as T4, okay? And you can see that it's made up of two tyrosine molecules. You've got these two rings here. And then we have triiodothyronine, also known as T3, and that's made up of two tyrosine molecules as well, okay? One kind of interesting side note that I want to just sort of point out here, you might notice all these iodine atoms on these molecules here. That is basically the reason that we have iodized salt. Okay, so back in the day before we had iodized salt, it was not uncommon for people to have iodine deficiencies, and those iodine deficiencies would lead to thyroid problems because those people would not be able to synthesize their thyroid hormones or not sufficient levels of thyroid hormones. So then they'd end up with problems. And so sort of I don't really know, the government, the food industry decided to just iodize salt as an easy way of introducing iodine into the diets of masses of people, thereby preventing iodine deficiencies, okay? Another side note that I want to mention is that not all amine hormones are tyrosine derived. Okay, so here's an example of an amine hormone that is not derived from tyrosine. This is the hormone melatonin, right? So if you look right here, this is the structure of melatonin. You may or may not be able to tell that it is derived from a single amino acid. It is derived from the amino acid tryptophan. So if you remember your amino acid structures, you can see that this is very similar to the structure of tryptophan, okay? Melatonin is a hormone that is involved in sleep regulation. So it sort of encourages sleep, okay? And you might have heard that this might sound familiar to you. I think usually comes up in the context of the Thanksgiving turkey, right? So people will often say, oh, turkey has a lot of tryptophan in it, and that's gonna make you sleepy. Well, this is the reason. It's because Tryptophan is a precursor for melatonin, and melatonin is going to induce sleep. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to go into great detail about the mean hormones. That's almost all I'm going to say. But what I want you to do right now is I want you to look at this table. Okay, you can see that the catecholamines and thyroid hormones have somewhat different properties. Okay, and I want you to take a look at these and compare them to the properties of peptide hormones and steroid hormones. Again, by looking at this table here. What I'd like you to do is kind of examine the table and answer these questions down here, right? So which class of amine hormones is more like the peptide hormones, okay? And then which of these classes is more like the steroid hormones, okay? So take a look at the table, hit pause, and we'll come back to it. Okay, so hopefully you figured out by looking at the table that the catecholamines tend to have more peptide hormone-like characteristics, right? And the thyroid hormones tend to act more like the steroid hormones, okay? And that's kind of the level, basically the level of depth that I expect you to know for these classes of hormones, these classes of amine hormones, okay? Basically, catecholamines are more like peptides, thyroids are more like the steroids. Okay, so that basically concludes our discussion of the amine hormones. These are your learning goals. That is the end of this set of lectures. I will see you next time.